A new market is on the horizon, and it's said that farmers are in the best possible position to take advantage. Carbon credits are a possibility to give farmers a means to diversify their income stream and create more predictability in their revenue streams, while at the same time ensuring that their land, air, water are healthy for future generations to come for farmers. Our topic today is called Corn and Carbon, Farmers' New Double Crop. And we're going to share with you where we are today in this space, where we believe we're headed, and how we can help partner with you to manage it. My name is Jamie Leifker. I'm the head of agronomy and product development for WinField United. We're a distributor that is owned by our retail partners in the field who are servicing your needs on a daily basis. And we focus on value-added insights to drive our product development efforts, as well as our focus in the field. And today we're blessed to have one of those owners on with us, Central Valley Ag, out of Nebraska and serving states surrounding, Aaron Sindelar, who's representing that organization, really driven around how we, as a company that's owned by retailers, are partnering to bring value to farmers in this space. Aaron, would you take a couple moments to tell the organization here about yourself?
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. As Jamie said, my name is Aaron Sindelar, and I am the conservation agronomist for Central Valley Ag. We have approximately 88 agronomy locations across Nebraska, Iowa, and Kansas. And my roles and responsibility are really helping growers adopt conservation practices, whether it be the agronomic decisions or any other decisions that come along with making those changes, as well as that also encompasses some of the initial steps with carbon trading.
Excellent. Also joining us today, we have a marketer from our WinField United seed team, who is also heading up a new business opportunity that we're launching called Services, centered around a topic we're calling the advanced acre. His name is Jim Hedges. Jim, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, thanks, Jamie. So my name is Jim Hedges, as Jamie said, and I lead our seed marketing group. And we represent brands like DeKalb and Asgrow and Brevant, NK, Credenz, as well as have our own proprietary brands, Armor and Cropland. But we also have some really exciting things going around the services platform that Jamie mentioned. And we work a lot on financing solutions for growers, as well as risk warranties. And we'll probably talk about those a little bit later. Oh, might I want to add, I also farm in Central Illinois. I live in Central Illinois, near Decatur, and farm with a young gentleman down near the Mawaco area.
Excellent. Excellent. I'll remind the audience that you're welcome to submit questions. We encourage you to submit questions that along the way here, and then we'll have a question and answer period at the end. We're going to jump right into this carbon market. And our intent here is to talk not just about the market itself, but what our views are and how we're trying to put solutions in place to help farmers step into this market. So, Jim, I'm going to ask you to talk about where is everyone focused in this market? And I think you got a slide that you're going to show on where we're stepping in, but where we're going to quickly pivot and move toward to really meet the realities of this market. Talk to us about that, please.
Yeah, Jamie. So this is a relatively new market. I mean, people have been talking about carbon credits for quite some time, but the market and the reality of actually fulfilling carbon demand has just really begun in earnest. There's so much pent-up demand because of environmental concerns. A lot of Fortune 500 companies have made carbon net neutral, the carbon negative pledges to their investors and to Wall Street. So as those promises are made and they want to fulfill those promises, that creates a lot of demand for carbon. So when you think about that demand, right now, to hit the reductions that we need to hit in the next decade to meet that demand, it's about 2 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide improvement needed per year. We can probably assume maybe 10% of that comes from removals. And removals are things like cover crops, no-till, those types of cultural practices. But that can't fulfill the whole demand. So to really get after that demand, you're going to have to look at how do we also think about reduction of greenhouse gas on top of sequestering carbon into the soil. If you look over to the right, you can see this graph that shows removals on the bottom are relatively, they're going to be very significant in the near term on the helping answer this demand, but in the long term, we're really going to have to focus on the reduction area. And that's where a lot of the work that we're doing, my team, Jamie, along with your team from agronomy, is really looking at how do we get more efficient, particularly around nitrous oxide abatement or nitrous oxide efficiency. It's really interesting when you think about carbon dioxide. Nitrous oxide is actually, from an impact standpoint, 288 times more impactful than carbon dioxide. And agriculture is by far the largest user of nitrogen. So we have a lot of opportunity for improvement there.
So, Jim, you mentioned that there's demand in this market. Who's creating that demand? Who's asking for these credits? Because you're talking like this is a market that exists today. Who are the players?
Jamie, it's Fortune 500 companies and beyond. I think just within the last couple of weeks, Microsoft announced a working partnership with our sustainability group, TrueTerra, in a program they call True Carbon, which is all about carbon removal into the soil. And I know that they're actively signing up growers right now. Beyond Microsoft, I mean, almost everybody in the Fortune 500 is involved in this type of effort, as well as many ag manufacturing companies as well.
Excellent. Thanks for that. Now, Aaron, locally with Central Valley Ag, you all are being produced or introduced to companies that are pursuing supply of carbon as well. Can you talk to us about some of the things that you're running into locally?
Yeah, absolutely. So, this is something where it's easy to think about this as a large company or a Fortune 500 company, kind of an opportunity or a pursuer of carbon credits. And we're actually not seeing that to be the case. We actually have some partnerships we're starting to formulate here within Nebraska in particular, where we're starting to see that interest and that desire of some of our local companies that are really trying to reduce their carbon footprint and offset greenhouse gas emissions. So this is something that, even though it's such a wide-ranging, large-scale type of topic, we're still seeing that local level interest, and again, an opportunity where some of these companies that you deal with in a day in, day out kind of situation, where they're also looking at the same thing of becoming carbon neutral.
Excellent. Back to Jim. What are the things that lead you to believe that this market has the potential to be meaningful enough for farmers? Because today I would think that our listeners are probably struggling to really understand how big of a opportunity is this for each one of them.
Well, I think I'll go back to when I was talking about the large scale demand from Fortune 500 companies, but Aaron just makes a great point, right? There's local demand as well. This is real, and I think that you're going to see, particularly with the new administration, push from them to make this come to fruition as well. So when you have companies holding or shareholders holding these companies accountable, then they're going to have to act on it. And beyond that, I mean, they want to act on it to improve the environment and improve our growing climate. The thing that also I believe is the huge opportunity for agriculture are there's really two major industries in the globe that can have true impact on this, and that's agriculture and forestry. So when you think about controlling our destiny on this, we have a great opportunity to not only grow crops, but to bring carbon into what I call a carbon bank as well, so that we can use it in the future when these opportunities arise.
Excellent. I'm going to come back to that carbon bank thing, so hold that thought. Aaron, what are the questions that you're getting from farmers right now?
Yeah, so we're starting to find out a lot of our growers and our customers are starting to, this is starting to hit popular press. They're starting to read it in the newspapers and the farm magazines. And a lot of them, some of them have done their homework, and they've been tracking this for the last couple of years. Where the majority of our customers that are asking about it, they're trying to figure out what it is, how it fits into their operation, and that's really what our goal is to help them figure out, how does this fit into their business plan within their farm. Is this something that they can leverage in specific situations, or is this something that they can utilize across their entire operation?
Are there other questions that they should be asking that they're not?
Yeah, so the biggest question I see is really asking, what type of practices do I need to change, or what type of practices do I need to adopt in order for myself to be more attractive, or to be able to capitalize on the opportunity? We know that there's specific practices that if you adopt those can really generate some higher end returns when it comes to carbon credits, or that reduction that Jim was discussing earlier. So really trying to understand not only how the whole dynamic of this carbon trading platform works, but also really starting to explore what type of management decisions do I need to look at adjusting in order to capitalize on the opportunity.
Yeah, let's talk about some of those practices, because there's not enough margin in this business to just try new things that aren't data backed, and that we can't just push farmers out into this carbon market. Yeah, it's great for the environment, but we can't take down the American farmer in the process. So, Jim, what are some of the things that your team is talking about to help make crop production more profitable while we pursue this carbon market and really advance profitability all at the same time?
Well, Jamie, you make a great point about, look, there's a great opportunity here, but there's risk with it as well. So not putting your farm profitability at risk, and Aaron, you nailed it. Being able to farm profitably and then bring a revenue stream like carbon in, that should be the ultimate goal. To do that, I think you need to understand what's the science and what's the data driving the recommendation, both on the productivity side, so growing the crop, as well as harvesting carbon and reducing greenhouse gas. There's a lot of demand in this space, and there's a lot of players in this space, some older players, some new players. And if I was a grower, the first question I would ask is, what's the engine behind this recommendation? And when I say that, I mean, what's the data? What's the science that drives it? How much data is there? Is it multiple year data? And what we're trying to do is use, Jamie, it's a lot of the data that you've and your team have worked on over, well, you haven't been in that role for 20 years, but I mean, over the last 20 years on really understanding how particularly corn hybrids respond to things like nitrogen and plant health, for instance. Because if we really understand those from a science-based standpoint, we can make recommendations that make us more efficient on not only optimizing our inputs, but optimizing yield at the same time. And that's, I think, is kind of the secret sauce of this whole double crop. If I can optimize yield, so I can grow more yield and I can do it using less inputs like nitrogen, then I am not only cutting down greenhouse gas emission from nitrogen, as well as making my farm more profitable, but I'm producing more grain, which is carbon. So I'm sequestering more carbon. So I'm participating in the reduction as well as that replacement market at the same time. Now, to do that, there's got to be a disciplined approach to apply that science, and that's where we use our services platform.
What you're talking about is music to my ears, because most of the models today, Aaron was talking about this with us last night when we were preparing, are really driven around three things to qualify for carbon credits. One, drive your nitrogen rate down, right, Aaron? No-till and cover crop. And I mean, that should just scare the life out of a farmer the moment you say, well, you need to start adjusting your nitrogen rate while at the same time you're trying to be more efficient with your production, right, Aaron?
Yeah, absolutely. And quite honestly, a lot of times driving your nitrogen rate down with no-till, especially initial adoption, those two don't exactly go hand in hand together. Sometimes they fight each other a little bit. So yeah, that's the difficulty of that, is that's where the programs are kind of structured for today. But hopefully, especially with the vision that WinField United has as well, where we can leverage the nitrogen management side, decision making that you're making on an annual basis anyway, that we can start looking at those type of strategies and really working to try to improve the nitrogen use efficiency on that side.
Absolutely. So what we're trying to do is take data, and especially around an input like nitrogen, which we know is next to water is the second most impactful input as it pertains to yield and profitability, and wrap risk management programs around it, again, that are backed by data, to help farmers step out there and try new things and adapt new practices that will lead to this second crop. And so the evolution of the Advanced Acre Services platform that starts with just helping farmers with financing and leads down the path toward taking some risk out of adapting new practices and really zoning in on production and nitrogen.
Yeah, Jamie, this is all built around enabling growers to continue to invest in inputs during the year that drive a high ROI in response to that input. The key being that it drives a higher ROI than the input cost. Correct. So from a financial standpoint, we don't want to try to have growers save themselves to prosperity. We want to help them invest with data and science driving the right investment in the right input. So having the ability to have cap space to continue to invest in that crop during the year, whether it means more nitrogen, less nitrogen, fungicide applications for plant health, micronutrient applications, those types of investments can drive huge gains in production. That's part of it. But when you look at this slide, what you're seeing is really a pipeline of service technology that we're trying to use to get ourselves ready for new markets like carbon. Because if we have the ability to continue to invest in the crop, we've got to fulfill that promise that I'm going to help you invest wisely. And that's where the data from the answer plots in our case comes in with so much relevant, because there's 67% of the hybrids that we test in our testing program, which is basically all the commercial hybrids that are high demand in the US. And we understand how each of those hybrids respond to nitrogen, fungicide, population, as well as cropping systems. So we can make really effective decisions around fungicide applications, nitrogen applications that drive that productivity. And we're so confident in it. When you look in the center of this slide, that's where you see the Advanced Acre RX platform, which is it's a prescription that would be written, Aaron, perhaps by you or another one of your agronomists. But what it does is it puts a disciplined approach to use the science as well as the product together to optimize that yield, as I talked about earlier. So it's all about growing as many bushels as possible, but doing it with the most efficient use of inputs. And then having a safety net underneath of a risk warranty. If it doesn't hit, for instance, 105% APH, you get the majority of those input costs reimbursed. So it's a way for us to use our data and basically help growers, along with the financing side, continue to invest in that crop with confidence to optimize that yield. The next step off of that is if we're optimizing that yield and we're doing things like reducing nitrogen and increasing biomass, that's where it can start to lead us into the potential new market. So here's how it works. The agronomists would basically take that data and they would go from end to end on the production standpoint, understanding the right hybrid for the right acre, the right seed treatment, the right nitrogen program, whether that's split application, the right stabilizers if needed, all those types of things, plant health, fungicide. So it goes end to end, builds a prescription, and then we implement that through the season with the flexibility, Jamie, to adapt based on the environment, what the environment gives us or doesn't give us. That way we can optimize that yield and our input costs at the same time. If it doesn't occur, that's when the safety net would come in. But to me, to go out and start to get into these new markets on carbon, you're going to have a disciplined approach that you can benchmark and prove out what you've done from a nitrogen efficiency standpoint, as well as a carbon sequestration standpoint.
Excellent. So in today's environment or previous environments, products come to market one way or another. They all work when they're placed correctly. And so WinField United's approach and our partnership with our owners like Central Valley Ag is really driven around better placement. And we're generating data that supports the placement of the products so that we have evidence, we have proof and insights that where we're placing products is going to lead to getting the most out of that investment. Previously, a farmer would make a decision, purchase a product, and they're essentially holding all of the risk. And so what Jim's team has done here is taken the data from the answer plots, 20 years of it, and is taking that to insurance companies and underwriting that risk premium. So you could pay a small fee, but defer the majority, if not more than the majority of that risk for that investment, so that you can confidently move ahead without having to worry about the risk that you are taking in that crop input investment. Now, we could talk about managing risk, and we could talk about what WinField United does, but it takes a partner in our retail owner with Central Valley Ag to execute on that recommendation, to operationally help you as a farmer get that done. Aaron, attach onto this, please, or bolt onto this how you help close the gap between the product purchases, the decisions, some of these risk premiums or risk assurances, and getting it done with the local farmer where it's most important.
Yeah, so as an agronomist, the first thing that I need at my disposal in order to do that is data-driven or science-driven information. If we don't have that level of information, then everything is kind of being put out with a little bit of a hope and a prayer, and that's just not in a world as an agronomist you really want to operate. So that's kind of the first step of importance is kind of having that knowledge base in hand. Really, when it comes to implementing things like these and making recommendations, it's the critical thing is how I look at it is being the trusted advisor to a grower. I want to be as informed as possible as I can, have that respect and that relationship built with that grower, so that they can have full confidence that myself as an agronomist is looking out for their best intentions and recommending whether it's products or specific fertilizer or seeding rates or anything like that. That's kind of that grower has that confidence in me that those decisions are made for their best interest.
When we think about science and we think about data, it's crystal clear that over a 10-year summary here, there's 4 categories that add up to just almost 100 bushel per acre annually that's at risk with poor product placement. Okay, and the number one is the second one down, which is nitrogen in the brown there, where on average, poor placement of nitrogen, poor timing of nitrogen with the right or the wrong hybrid costs up to 67 bushel per acre. We also know about population and what that has for an impact on yield, as well as rotation. So seed placement becomes super important, as well as nutrition, plant health, and then as we get into these carbon markets where we're introducing other biological stresses like no-till and cover crops, we know that those agronomically are fundamentally the top areas that a farmer needs to focus to drive profitability. And so WinField United and our owners are really focusing in on getting these practices correct, getting them right, before we move on to adopting things that we don't have data to support. Okay, there's vast evidence here that these are the most important areas that we have to that we need to focus on, making sure that we have right as we introduce potentially new stresses that that come into play in a carbon market. I want to turn it back to you, Aaron, as it pertains to objections and obstacles. So as you're interacting with farmers, what are some of the obstacles as you're bringing this whole data and the carbon package together? What are the obstacles that you're running into with farmers, and how are you overcoming those?
Yeah, probably the biggest obstacle that I've ran into so far is that as we look at some of these carbon programs, the likelihood that they're going to be a long-term type of a commitment is a real possibility. And as we discuss that with growers, you know, somebody, for example, that maybe they're they're traditional conventional tiller, and maybe they're asking and they're being asked to switch to no-till to be involved in a carbon program. For some folks, that's a pretty big commitment. Where I think there's a lot of opportunity if we go down this nitrogen management route, you know, the use of stabilizers or, you know, any other type of enhanced nutrient management practices where, you know, those are things where it's not only going to help the bottom line from a profitability within that field and help a producer, you know, produce more bushels of corn, but also they could take advantage of these carbon programs on the other side and get a credit for what those practices provide from the greenhouse gas emission offset.
Jim, can you go through some of the programs that are available? Because I understand that we've launched a program called True Carbon. So there's programs and dollars out here available for farmers today. So back to your point that this is real. And then your team is introducing some programs that we hope to lead to future opportunities. Can you talk through how your team is introducing that?
Sure. You know, Aaron said something really important. I mean, the True Carbon offer, there's a lot of interest in it, but not every grower is going to be interested in it because it does require things like no-till, cover crops with a time commitment so that carbon can be documented and that the fact is there is carbon being replaced. There's a lot of growers that's going to be their cup of tea. There's some growers that aren't. So what we want to do is give opportunities to all growers. True Carbon is a major focus for us now, but as we look forward into these nitrogen enhancement, nitrogen efficiency type of efforts, that's really where our focus is going on the WinField United side. Is participating in True Carbon and making that successful, but what's the next generation of True Carbon going to look like? And we work very closely with the TrueTerra team on these types of ideas. So using those risk warranties, using that data that you showed on the previous slide, Jamie, that's really, really important because that's a lot of that fuel for that engine that's driving the recommendations I talked about. And when you think about, I believe it's 6 million data points a year. I mean, that's a lot of data. They should give growers confidence. I can remember on my farm, the first time I saw that, this was before I came into WinField United. My ag retailer showed me that same type of data. And I was saying, well, gosh, I run my nitrogen program in a certain way. I use fungicide, but I never have used response to scores on a hybrid basis. So now I can select the right hybrid, not only for the soil type, but for the cropping system I want to employ to get the most out of that seed corn investment, because we all know seed corn is not an inexpensive investment. That's just the beginning of it, though, and that's where the risk warranty becomes really the vehicle to help growers get to that next generation opportunity in this carbon market, which we've got one product that we're launching this year, Jamie, in a small launch, a pilot that we call an impact nitrogen use efficiency. And it's all around using that data, taking soil samples so we understand how much fuel, and when I say fuel, nitrate, was in the soil at the beginning of the season, what's left at the end of the season, so that we're building a database for the grower about how much nitrogen reduction they're having versus a benchmark. That starts to build the carbon bank. And then over years, you have credits in a carbon bank built that you can cash in at some point. So I can see Truterra giving a long-term commitment revenue stream, but having annual revenue streams coming in through these types of programs.
Yeah, so there's a word that everyone needs to remember as you entertain or consider this segment. It's called additionality, right? So we have to sequester more carbon. And I know, Aaron, in your area, you've got a lot of farmers that have been no-tilling for years, and unfortunately, that there's a discussion that you're having to have with customers about is that can you get paid for that? The True Carbon offer looks back 5 years, and if you've implemented anything in the last 5 years, there's a $20 per ton payment that could be added there that you can sign up for today. But Aaron, how are you approaching that farmer that he's doing a lot of the right things, but what is the message, or how do you approach him so that he or she can participate along the lines of this?
Yeah, and that's kind of the unfortunate part of the structure of the carbon market right now, is that we have a lot of growers who have been doing the right thing for a long time. That they've been doing no-till for 20 to 30 years, some even longer than that. And we have some that have adopted the cover crops, for example. And right now we don't have a whole lot of options for them, unfortunately. Even so, as we look at that additionality piece, where these growers have already adopted the two most common practices for these carbon markets today, we need another opportunity like the nitrogen management piece in improving nitrogen use efficiency, because that gives them an opportunity where we can have something to offer to them. Where today, again, it's the discussion that we have is, well, this is what we hope is going to look like in a couple of years, and we'll be ready for that when it comes along, and we'll bring those opportunities to you when we have them. It's just we don't have anything to offer you today, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's excellent. And so what we want to partner with our owners, we want our owners to partner with their farmers, is to get moving in this space around production. So we know that when you produce more on the acre, you're not only harvesting more, you're actually producing more biomass. That is a key indicator to lead to more carbon in the soil. We know that as you produce more and you manage your nitrogen more efficiently and other nutrients, you're exhausting or emitting less greenhouse gases, particularly the nitrous oxide that Jim talked about. And so what our aim is to create more short-term and more scalable opportunities that will bolt onto the existing carbon programs that are out there today. And then as you're looking at stretching production and adopting more practices, what WinField United and Central Valley Ag aim to do is provide you with risk mitigating services that you can attach to the programs that you're participating in. And I've got a slide here actually that does show a bit how we did that. We in 19 different answer plots in 2020, we compared a local standard protocol to what we call 100% and 105% APH risk assurance level. And what we were able to identify is that 100% risk assurance, 100% of APH, was able to out yield the standard treatment by 13.5 bushel on average in the combination of both high and low yielding environments. And then the question becomes, because I know if farmers on the call here, you're probably thinking, well, I never shoot for APH. I'm shooting for something way over that. So how do we take that data and leverage it in a way that we could take you to 105%, or in the future, as we accumulate more data, to 110%? And we've got a risk assurance that we can tie to those so that you can produce more. And what we hope to do is work toward benchmarking your fields from a carbon perspective. We're working with some manufacturer partners to be able to go out and pull the soil samples and soil cores and get you a benchmark in your field as soon as possible, so that you can start working and measuring the amount of carbon that you're sequestering in the soil and reducing from an emissions perspective. You don't have to sell your carbon to participate. And Jim, do you want to talk about some of your aspirations as it pertains to what right away in the discussion here you call the carbon bank?
Yeah, Jamie, and that slide that you just showed is really, really critical, because the number one thing that we can't sacrifice is productivity and acre revenue to participate in the carbon, because you don't know how big that opportunity is going to be, and you can't have a zero offset ourselves doing it. But if we can increase that yield, which is the biomass that you talked about, increase the revenues per acre, and you just showed some of those revenue increases were beyond the cost of the inputs. So when you're looking at $29 to $45, those are real dollars, right? So we're helping optimize that yield and profitability. It's really the economics of agronomics. But at the same time, we start to benchmark and understand what's going on from a carbon reduction standpoint. That's the double crop, because I'm optimizing yield at the same time that I'm building carbon stores in the soil. I'm able to document the carbon stores in the soil on an annual basis, so I understand what my bank account looks like as the years go on, and then when the opportunity comes, I can monetize that. It isn't absolutely happening now, Jamie, but that's what we're working on.
That's why it's important to be partnered with a retail-owned organization, a cooperative, owned by many of our owners are farmer-owned, so that when we go to Washington and deal with policymakers and lawmakers as to how credits get verified and then certified within the registry, that we can develop programs that Central Valley Ag can bring to farmers that are more scalable than what we have today. And what we have today that's just it. That's what it is today, but it's not what it likely will be in the future. And know that when you're partnered with us on the screen here, that we're working toward methods and verifiable approaches that will lead to this double crop that we're talking about, while we increase the production on the acre. Before we close this out, Aaron, Jim, I want to thank you for joining us here and what you've shared. Aaron, any closing comments pertaining to what you want farmers to hear as I look at this season? Planting season is 45 to 60 days in front of us for your trade area. There's still time for farmers to think about some things. What do you want them thinking about?
Yeah, I would say when it comes to this carbon market arena, it's been a unbelievably rapidly developing space. It's amazing how much we've learned about it even in the last 3 months. My recommendation is that if this is something that you're interested in, make sure you do your homework, and be a little patient as well too, because it's easy to see maybe a program come along today that maybe it's gonna provide you with $15 a ton for your carbon, and maybe down the road we'll have something that's maybe a little bit more, and especially as we look forward and we're going to have more opportunities and we're going to be able to leverage the efficient nitrogen type of practices and be able to again, as both you, Jamie, and Jim have talked about thus far, is not only improve your yields through by improving nitrogen use and increasing your profitability, but also having that opportunity to sell the credit from adopting those type of practices. It's an exciting time, and quite frankly, I can't wait for that opportunity to be able to leverage some of those nitrogen practices and again, just be able to be another way to generate additional revenue from somebody's farm.
Excellent. Jim, from your perspective, do you want to just close here by just giving us a few things to think about, as well as the assurance of maybe not specifically who, but how many players you're working with up and down the value chain to really bring this forward, so there's a level of assurance that the farmer is doing the right thing by partnering with us?
Well, Jamie, we work with all the major agricultural basic manufacturers in this space. We work with industry leaders in banking. We're working with people outside our industry on the carbon side. So it's a very broad scope approach. But what I love is the data driving exactly what Aaron was talking about. What excites me is we have the opportunity in agriculture to define what this space looks like. And so many times agriculture is looked at as the bad guy. And 99.9% of farmers aren't the bad guy. They don't want to use more nitrogen than they have to, and they don't. But if we can get more efficient at it, we can have the biggest impact. And we have the ability to define what this space looks like, where I think back 20 years ago when sustainability was defined, it was defined by people outside of agriculture. So that's what gets me excited about it. And then the ability to continue to get more efficient on growing better crops and more profitability at the same time as being on the cutting edge of these new markets and new revenue streams at the grower level. I mean, it excites me from my own farming perspective. I mean, the one thing that, we use these systems on our farm. I'm not asking anybody to do anything we don't do. And it's incredible what we've been able to do with our nitrogen use efficiency. So it works. And that's what excites me about it, is I feel like there's a lot of marketing out there. There's not a whole lot of substance in marketing. And if I was a grower, that's what I'd be looking for. What's the substance or the engine behind the marketing? So that as you enter into a new space, you have confidence that you can actually drive revenues as well as crop profitability out of it.
There you have it, gang. Foundationally, we do this on behalf of our owners for their farmers, and we're doing it in a manner that's science-based. So we're not transferring that risk to the farm gate, that we're trying to absorb that in the process. I want to thank, on behalf of WinField United, Central Valley Ag, the rest of our owners. I want to thank you all for tuning in, and we'll move to questions, and we hope to be able to lead along with you down this path.